Welcome to Africa Express. Today we are going to the Gambia. We have with us none other than Her Excellency Dr. Isatou Njie Saidy. Ma'am, you are welcome to Africa Express. As I was listening to you, you're talking about investment in Africa. What do you think African leaders can do to attract investment into Africa?
Provide the enabling environment. All that investors want is peace and stability, which is the precondition for any investment. What investors want is good business, profitable business, and it's there in Africa. So the heads of state or the leaders in Africa have to sell Africa well. But as I said, provide the enabling environment for business to operate. That is very critical. They talked about issues of corruption that has to be addressed. The issue of incentives, that's what businesses are looking for, has to be addressed. And of course, as I said, we have to identify potential areas of investment and business in Africa. And in that way, investors can choose. Wherever they have comparative advantage in, and we have it in our countries, they'll be there to invest with us. But as I said, the environment has to be right. The policies have to be right. And that is important.
Talk of environment. Your country, the Gambia, has been stable for a while. So what is it that you're doing right that the rest of the African countries need to do?
Well, I guess first of all, I would say that Gambians are peaceful. Just like Sierra Leone. Because I've been to Sierra Leone as well. I find Sierra Leone and Gambia very much peaceful. I would say that once the Gambians feel that the government is doing the right thing, as per their wishes, in terms of development, in terms of governance, in terms of just what we're talking about today, the private sector and investment, then Gambians for sure would be willing to support their government. And if others see that they support their government, outsiders will also be willing to work with Gambians, partner with them, to assist the government to move ahead. And indeed for the people to make development happen, because development is all about people.
Yes.
It's people who really cause development. It's not governments. Governments, as I told you earlier, provide the enabling environment only for people to do the rest. So I think that's what the government did right. First of all, they had the right policies, as I told you. Like I told you, the Vision 2020, I just made mention of that, which has a private sector-led growth. Because if the government realizes that it's not for government to lead, government only provides the enabling environment and the private sector does the rest. The people, they can do the rest. That is what I mean. That is what is happening in the Gambia. Just to give you an example.
Gambia, in terms of employment, it's about 4%. Again, it goes back. For some reason, Gambia seems to be doing something different. What are the methods that you used as a country to create, to make it for the employment to be so low, unlike the neighboring African countries?
Because we realize that big government is no good for anybody. And government cannot employ everybody. You don't want underemployment, for example. You can have big government and everybody doesn't give their best. So government should only take what it needs in terms of making sure that the services that we offer to both the private sector, the informal sector, to the people generally are right. And you don't need big government to do it. So the rest of people should be employed by the informal sector, by the private sector. And that is what our policies have put in place. And exactly that is what is happening. And I think it's beginning to tune into the young people who realize that government should not be the major employer. But indeed the private sector should. And you should be self-employed rather than depending on somebody else to employ you. You should create your own.
So in other words, Gambia has created sectors whereby the private sector are hiring, or individuals are actually creating their own business.
They are creating their own business most of the time. Because the biggest business cohort is in the informal sector. and informal sector players. It's either family business or individual setting up business. And that has been from time immemorial in West Africa. So Gambians know. That's why you find the Sarahules in Sierra Leone. You call them Maracas or something like that in Sierra Leone. Soninke or Maraca, those been in the diamond business. Most of them are from.
I'm Nigerian. My husband is the
somebody
from
came and said Sierra Leone.
Yes. He is from Sierra Leone, but I'm Nigerian.
Okay.
Yes.
But just to give an example.
Yes.
Those Gambians who go out there into the diamond business, gold and so on, and Angola, they Sierra Leone and elsewhere. That's a special tribe. From time immemorial, they don't want those men employed. What they want to do is employ them because they know they make more money being self-employed than allowing governments to employ them.
So being self-employed, is the government assisting them with loans or grants? Because this is part of the issue that other African countries are facing in terms of young people actually starting their own business because they don't have money. So did Gambia offer grants or works with the bank?
Yes, we have certain projects that help young people who just left out of school. For example, we have a lot of skills training programs. In fact, the first program we had in the Gambia, thanks to Nigeria, what we call the National Youth Service Scheme, because you had it first before we had this Youth Service Scheme. So today it's doing very well in the Gambia, but we got the initiative from Nigeria, to be honest, during the Second Republic. So really, that is creating employment for young people. So what it does, if young people leave at the end of their training, there are certain grants we call Gambia jobs, for example. It creates jobs for young people. Development partners have partnered with us, like UNDP, and of course the Spanish government. They provided funds in there to assist. And we have the National Enterprise Development Initiative as well, under the Minister of Youth and Sports, that is also assisting young people to set up business. Just to give you a few examples.
Yes.
We have the Indigenous Business Advisory Service, which advises business people at the level. They advise you and they also help you contract loans. But generally, you have a lot of banks. In fact, a lot of Nigerian banks, by the way, let me tell you that in the Gambia today, I think 10 of our banks are Nigerian. They are all coming from small Gambia. They must have seen something. That's what I tell you. Because the business people are very sharp. They see potentials and they come and take advantage. So those banks are there, and there are other Gambian banks. So really, the financial sector is thriving in the Gambia. And it has potentials to give loans. Whoever can, of course, the interest rates. We've been discussing with the central bank, and they've been urging the financial institutions such as these banks that I'm telling you, commercial banks, to go down with regards interest rates, so that the private sector, especially the productive sector, can access some of those loans. Because with productive sector, some of the businesses are slow, like this agriculture, for example. It's a risky area, for sure. And most of the commercial banks don't want to take risks. But they usually have windows, private sector windows, where they can assist these young people to get some loans from the commercial banks. But where they can't, of course, internationally, we have some of our multilateral agencies have also got private sector windows. And perhaps the Chamber of Commerce and Industry can work with those so that they can access the private sector window in the World Bank, in the ADB, and indeed in other, even ECOWAS does assist the private sector. So there are potentials for the whole of West Africa, not just for the Gambia, to be able to expand that private sector.
Girls' education.
Yeah.
Africa as a whole. There are quite just a few countries in Africa that are doing well with girls' education. What can we do as a country to prevent parents from giving their daughters out there?
I know we've made a lot of inroads in the Gambia. Let me tell you that too. Today we've been commended by the United Nations. I just went to give a speech on MDG 3, which is women's empowerment. That is equity, equality, and the empowerment of women. And I use girls' education as the entry point in the Gambia. That we give free education, for example, at the lower basic level. That is from 1 to 6 years. That is the primary. And then middle, 3 to 9. And then at lower secondary, 4 to 2 years of secondary. It's free education for girls. that has been instituted by the government. And that has encouraged a lot of parents who, for choices, because when they cannot afford to educate both, they tend to sacrifice the girl and they invest in the boy. But when there is free education for girls, today we begin to see a reversal. As a result, in fact, we have in many of the classes more girls than boys. Men. So now boys are dropping out, and we are going to again look at yes, look at deal with gender rather than just with girls. So that shows the success story in the Gambia, and that has helped to curb this issue of early marriage, for example. Because we still have teenage pregnancy in some instances, for sure. But so early marriage has been addressed as a result of that, because they stay in school longer, and by the time they marry, they are already 18, 19 years, or they are into university now. So that helps. So we need to now develop the childcare and make them stay there as well, even longer. And that's why we are working within the Gambia. But yes, the issue of definitely socio-cultural practices has to be looked at. Yeah. So that is what is affecting girls not going to school or being dropped out of school for marriage purposes. It's a lot of sensitization is happening in Africa. The media has a critical role to play, like yours. And once we educate the parents and tell them boys are just as good as girls, girls are just as good as boys, let them be convinced. And they are beginning to see results. I'm sure. I wouldn't know, but I think you might be more successful than your brother. I might be more than my brother. So once the parents see that indeed I can invest in my girl child and she'll do even better than the boy child, I think they'll be convinced, to invest in you and invest in me. So invest in our daughters as well.
You're absolutely right. One question. We still have issues of prenatal death.
Yeah,
women dying.
I know.
Is there anything as women you can do to advocate for more care for us, for the continent to improve prenatal care for pregnant women?
There is. Just to give you an indication, for us in the Gambia, before 1990, the maternal mortality rate was 1,050 per 100,000 lifetimes, very high. Then later, 10 years on, because every 10 years we do census in the Gambia, by the way, consistently. We've never relied on that. And we are doing one in 2003. Yes, 2013 rather, this year, because the last one was 2003. But when we checked our figures, 10 years on, later, we found that it dropped to 730, still high, yes, because it's women dying. But reduced, definitely. Now, when we checked it sometime this year, through the essential period, because the next census is 2013, like I told you, 2 years time, we found that it dropped to 556 per 100,000. And today I'm told the figures are even lower. That shows that something is being done right. Because we improve on, first of all, we made sure that health services are affordable and accessible. Like my president provides free maternal care and infant care. No woman or child pays for anything in the hospital. It's free. I think that also encourages people to go to the hospitals, the health facilities, to tracking stations. And he's also built a lot of health infrastructure. Major health centers, minor health centers, dispensaries, district hospitals, and indeed hospitals in themselves at different parts so that women can access, everybody, the whole community can access health. He's improved on referral, because that is key. Yes. Referral is where the women die sometimes. At-risk mothers have to have waiting homes, maternity waiting homes have been provided in some of the tertiary institutions, where they can be cared for, and by trained midwives. And nurse anesthetists have been trained. A lot of expertise we need in the health sector is being provided through training. Today we have a University of the Gambia and a medical school. We never had that. We used to come to Nigeria, we used to go elsewhere. But thank God today we have it, and therefore we can train a critical mass of people in these critical areas of anesthetics and gynecological related areas, so that we can address the woman's concern, particularly at prenatal, as well as postnatal, because people die also at postnatal. Yes. So we look at the issues of nutrition, because most of the time people don't seem to realize that nutrition is part of health. And you look at the nutrition of lactating mothers, for example, pregnant women, so that is being addressed. Hemorrhages, all sorts of issues that affect the woman are being addressed today, and that has reduced maternal mortality. That's just to give you one success story that most of us should be able to do in Africa. And sometimes it's not very expensive either. When you compare the loss, losing women. At once I remember the WHO Director General once said that women dying in the world generally every minute is like a whole jumbo jet crashing. You know, people don't talk about it because everybody dies silently in different places. But imagine a jumbo jet dropping. Today you will make it news. I'll see it in your satellite or whatever, in your news, in your radio or TV station. But if people die in different villages and different places, you know, who says that, talks about it? It's all science. But when you put the figures together, you know that it's serious. And that is why our presidents, at the level of the AU, have formed CAMA. You remember CAMA, I'm to CARMMA? That is reducing maternal mortality in Africa. It's a program that they have in place at the level of the AU to address the issues of maternal mortality. So it's becoming an issue by our heads of state, not just by ministers of health.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I would very much like another time with you, because it seems like there's so many women issues in Africa that we need people knowledgeable like you to advocate for, and at least so that they will know that something is being done in certain areas and that they can follow the example. I think Gambia has done an incredible job in reducing that rate. Unfortunately, the other African countries are still suffering from that. I would encourage or ask you to continue to advocate for women issues. Again, I thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
You have been watching Africa Express with Her Excellency from Gambia. Again, we talked about various issues, especially issues that has to do with women, education of girls, eradication or ways to control prenatal death and postnatal death of women. Gambia has set up an example of this, and I hope those of you listening out there or other government, African governments that are listening, please do reach out to Gambia and see what they're doing correctly, because I think that's the only way. We should not be embarrassed as to emulate good results, and Gambia has done that, and we should take advantage of that. Thank you for watching Africa Express. Please continue to watch us on this channel, same time and same place.